Hi there. I once read an anthropological study about a tribal people known as the Makuna. These people believed that the world is flat. And they were right. Their world was flat because their definition of the world was not planet Earth. Their world ended at the horizon. Beyond the world, only white people and other demons lived. It was also so that the land were sacred. They couldn't move because the place where they lived were the place where they had always lived and would always live. Technically, they had actually moved to that spot just a few decades earlier, but most of them were born there, and this is their sacred place. This is where they must stay. Right now, a lot of people live in a round, globalized planet world, and so far, none of us are living in the flat world, which is the solar system. However, there's still a lot of people living in small, flat worlds in one way or another. And I'm not talking just about tribes and such, I'm talking about marginalized groups of various kinds. The thing is this: when people describe the world they live in, physical world or social world or both, they will usually describe the world they actually live in, the world that actually matter to them, rather than some neutral outsider point of view regarding geography or geology or big social structure or whatever. And this means that when people say outrageous stuff that is obviously not true in a literal sense, they might still have a point that is worth listening to. This brings me to the issue of the MRM, the men's rights movement. I live on a planet where almost all of the economical, political, and military power is held by men. I'm talking about national levels and global levels. Almost all the really influential people are men. And this world has a very big heritage of male supremacy over women. The Bible contains two different creation stories. One where humans, male as well as females, were created in God's image, and one where only the male human were created in God's image, and the female were created as a side point, as some kind of sex toy for the male. And this other creation story has been quite heavily emphasized during these last few thousand years. A lot of people have been thinking like that. Man equals good, female equals bad. And this is not limited to Western civilization. In Hinduism and Buddhism, it is a common thought that you reincarnate higher up the better you are in this life. If you're good, you reincarnate as a man. If you're not as good, you reincarnate as a woman, or even worse, an animal. This is a rather patriarchal world in many ways. There is quite obviously a lot of male privilege and oppression of women. But in this world, we have these MRM who claim that no, there is no oppression against women, the oppression is against men. Women are the privileged gender. This kind of argument is obviously not true on the large scale world, and there are lots and lots of small scale worlds where it's definitely not true either. But are there some small scale worlds where there is a point to this? Well, yeah, I do think that a lot of men has been getting a really shitty deal in two ways. One of these ways is being fed a lie about being superior, and it's really hard when this myth crashes down. When you grew up to be a king and patriarch and you realize that, hey, patriarch is dying, there is no kingdom for me, that kind of sucks. MRM usually gets dismissed, and rightly so, for wanting to preserve old privileges and just not seeing their privileges. But there's also the issue of how much privilege these men actually have. You know, as a man, you get really limited benefits from the fact that other men have power. And things that happened before you were even born, you don't get much out of that. So, what male privileges do we have left? Well, there are a few. Let's have a look at 3 primary male privileges. Being head of the household, being taken seriously to a much larger extent than women, and having a chance at all to progress in society and become part of the ruling elite. Well, these 3 privileges are fading. Families are changing. Men are not head of the household so much anymore. And being taken seriously? Well, there are still some male privileges there, but this is changing. It's getting less gendered and more a matter of education and charisma. Certain men are getting really left behind, those who don't have those qualities, for starters. And getting a chance to be a part of the elite, well, there's a lot of men who will never get a chance. What they are left with is being told that they are privileged. Privileges that are fading or wasn't even there for them, only for other men. There's a lot of guys who have a lot of reason to be angry. And I think the MRM is a rage that is mostly misdirected, but do have some valid grounds to be angry. When you are marginalized, it kinda sucks to be told over and over that you are actually a part of the ruling elite and should be treated as such and held accountable as such. And even if you are part of the ruling elite, you are still human, and it is not okay to deny your human rights. Violence, sexual and otherwise, is always deplorable, but sadly, there are a lot of attitudes that violence, sexual and otherwise, against men doesn't count or doesn't matter. This is something that really need to be countered. I don't see the MRM at large doing much about that, but lately I encountered an MRM YouTube blogger that talks quite a bit about those issues, and I think she has some really good points on these issues. I plan to make a few videos about the MRM and its nihilistic twin, the PUA, the so-called pickup artists, analyzing some of the things that they tend to talk about. The first video will be about my own views about gender equality and feminism. But this will have to wait to another day because it's quickly approaching midnight here. Have a good time.